The hotel maid leaves origami on every pillow, unaware a guest is a famous art gallery owner. This small act of creativity was Elena's only rebellion against the monotony that had become her life. Tiny paper birds and flowers left behind like whispered messages to strangers she would never meet. The afternoon light filtered through the half-drawn curtains of room 307, casting long shadows across the freshly made bed. Elena Vasquez smoothed her palm over the crisp white linen one last time, the familiar scent of industrial detergent clinging to her uniform. 28 years old, with eyes that had forgotten how to sparkle and hands that moved with mechanical precision, bed, bathroom, vacuum, repeat. She reached into the pocket of her navy uniform where she kept her secret treasures, small squares of colored paper she'd collected over months. Some were repurposed from discarded magazines in the lobby, others from gift shops downtown when she could spare the change. Each piece represented a tiny possibility, a moment of creation amid the endless cycle of cleaning other people's messes. With practiced fingers, Elena folded a square of crimson paper, her movements quick and certain. The origami crane took shape beneath her touch. Fold, crease, tuck, fold again. A delicate neck emerged, proud wings, a perfect tail. She placed it gently on the pristine white pillow, its vibrant color a startling contrast against the sterile hotel bedding. "One more wish sent into the world," she whispered to herself, the words barely audible even in the empty room. Elena had learned origami from her grandmother, who told her that each fold carried intention, each crease a silent prayer. When Abuela died 3 years ago, leaving Elena alone in a city that never truly felt like home, the paper folding became both memory and lifeline. She left these small creations for guests, not because the Westbrook Grand Hotel asked her to, they would probably reprimand her if they knew, but because it was the only way she knew to make something beautiful in a life that had become defined by what she had lost. She finished the room, backing away to check for anything missed. The crane stood sentinel on the pillow, a tiny guardian of dreams for whoever would sleep there tonight. Elena allowed herself a small smile before closing the door behind her and wheeling her cleaning cart to the next room. What she couldn't know was that room 307 was reserved for Marcus Chen, whose name appeared in art magazines and whose gallery openings in New York drew celebrities and critics alike. What she couldn't know was that Marcus Chen hadn't been able to feel anything about art, or much of anything at all, for longer than he cared to admit. Marcus Chen dropped his leather weekend bag on the hotel room floor and loosened his tie with a weary sigh. Another city, another acquisition trip, another hollow performance as the brilliant eye behind the Chen Gallery. At 42, he had achieved everything his immigrant parents had dreamed for him: success, recognition, wealth, and felt nothing but the crushing weight of it all. He moved to the window, gazing down at Chicago's magnificent mile without really seeing it. The gallery's anniversary exhibition was in 6 weeks, and he still hadn't found the centerpiece that would silence the whispers that Marcus Chen had lost his touch, that his once revolutionary vision had calcified into safe commercial choices. The truth was worse than the rumors. It wasn't that he couldn't spot valuable art anymore, it was that nothing moved him, nothing surprised him, nothing made his heart beat faster or his mind race with possibilities. The paintings and sculptures that crossed his path were just expensive objects to be bought, displayed, and sold, a transaction stripped of magic. Marcus turned from the window, ready to order room service and review portfolios of local artists, when he saw it. A small red crane perched on his pillow, so unexpected it seemed to vibrate with its own presence in the otherwise standard hotel room. He approached slowly, as if the paper bird might take flight. Picking it up, he was struck by the precision of the folds, the economy of the creation. No tape, no glue, just paper transformed through human touch. He turned it over in his hand, feeling the minute texture of the paper, the intentionality behind each crease. Something stirred in his chest, faint and almost forgotten, like music heard from a passing car. Curiosity, genuine, unbidden curiosity. There was no note, no explanation. Just this small red bird waiting for him after a day of disappointments. Marcus placed it carefully on the nightstand before calling the front desk. "Good evening, Mr. Chen. How may we assist you?" The polished voice answered after 2 rings. "The origami bird in my room. Is this something the hotel provides?" A pause. "I'm not aware of any origami service, sir. Perhaps it was left by a previous guest?" "The room was just cleaned," Marcus insisted, unable to explain why it mattered. "Let me check with housekeeping, sir." May I put you on hold? Marcus waited, absently touching the wing of the crane with his fingertip. After several minutes, the voice returned. I apologize for the delay, Mr. Chen. It seems this is something one of our housekeeping staff occasionally does. I can have it removed if it's bothering you. No, Marcus said quickly. No, don't remove it. I was just curious who made it. Another pause. I believe it would have been Elena who serviced your room today. Would you like to speak with a manager about this? Marcus sensed the protective tone, the assumption that he was complaining. Not at all. Please tell Elena her work is appreciated. He hung up before the receptionist could respond. That night, Marcus slept better than he had in months, the red crane standing guard over his dreams. Elena arrived at work the next morning with leaden feet. Her supervisor, Mrs. Patel, had asked to see her before her shift started. Never a good sign. She found the older woman in the small office adjacent to the laundry room, glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed schedules. You wanted to see me? Elena asked, her fingers twisting the strap of her worn purse. Mrs. Patel looked up, her expression unreadable. Yes, Elena. Please close the door. Elena's heart sank. She needed this job. Since losing her second position at the diner last month, the hotel wages barely covered rent and her community college classes. If Mrs. Patel had found out about the origami, a guest in 307 called about your little paper creations, Mrs. Patel said, removing her glasses. Elena swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I know it's not part of the protocol. I won't do it anymore. Mrs. Patel's face softened unexpectedly. Actually, Elena, he wasn't complaining. He asked who made it, said to tell you your work is appreciated. The tension in Elena's shoulders released slightly. He liked it? Apparently so. Mrs. Patel studied her. How long have you been doing this? About 6 months, Elena admitted. Not for every room, just sometimes. When I have time. And you taught yourself? My grandmother taught me. Before she died. Mrs. Patel nodded, a decision forming behind her eyes. Well, as long as you're not taking extra time on your rounds, I don't see the harm. And if guests appreciate it? She shrugged. Just don't let it interfere with your actual duties. I won't. Thank you, Mrs. Patel. As Elena turned to leave, Mrs. Patel added, And Elena? The guest in 307 is staying for 5 nights. Important client, they say. Elena nodded, her mind already fluttering with ideas for tomorrow's creation. Marcus spent the day in meetings with potential artists, his attention repeatedly drifting to the red crane in his pocket. He'd impulsively brought it with him, this small token made by unknown hands. During a particularly tedious presentation by a sculptor whose work was technically perfect but emotionally vacant, Marcus found himself touching the crane in his pocket, tracing its angles with his fingertip. By late afternoon, having found nothing worthy of acquisition, he returned to the hotel earlier than planned. He paused outside his door, suddenly wondering if housekeeping had already been through, if there might be another creation waiting. The room was immaculate, the bed made with hospital corners, fresh towels hanging in the bathroom, and there, centered on his pillow, sat a delicate paper lotus flower, this one folded from paper the color of a summer sky. Marcus picked it up carefully, marveling at how the simple paper had been transformed into something so elegant. The lotus sat open, its petals an invitation, a moment of stillness in paper form. Without thinking, he placed it beside the crane on the nightstand, creating a small gallery of unexpected treasures. He wondered about Elena, what she looked like, why she left these creations, whether she knew how precisely this lotus captured what had been missing from every piece of art he'd seen today. After ordering room service, Marcus opened his laptop to review the day's disappointments, but his gaze kept returning to the paper flowers. On impulse, he typed "meaning of origami lotus" into the search bar. The results told him that the lotus represented rebirth, purity, and spiritual awakening in many cultures, that the flower rises from the mud to bloom unblemished above the water, that it was a symbol of beauty emerging from unlikely origins. Marcus closed his laptop, unsettled by how much this resonated, how a simple paper flower left by a stranger could articulate everything he'd been unable to name about his current state. For the first time in years, he reached for the small sketchbook he still carried out of habit rather than use. His pencil moved hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence as he sketched the lotus, not as it appeared but as it made him feel, lines extending beyond the flower, reaching across the page like ripples. The next morning, Elena was assigned different floors, and her heart sank, realizing she wouldn't service room 307. She'd stayed up late working on a special design, a more complex dragon that had taken her 3 attempts to perfect. Now it sat in her pocket, waiting for a pillow that wouldn't be hers to make. During her lunch break, she approached Rita, who had the 7th floor today. "Would you mind if I did room 307 for you?" Elena asked casually, unwrapping her sandwich in the break room. Rita looked up, suspicious. "Why? Got a cute guest you're stalking?" She laughed at her own joke. Elena forced a smile. "No, nothing like that. I started something for that guest. Mrs. Patel knows about it." "The origami thing?" Rita raised an eyebrow. "Word gets around. But sure, we can swap 307 for 412. The lady in 412 barely messes anything up, easy clean." "Thanks, Rita. I appreciate it." Later, Elena slipped into room 307, noticing immediately that her previous creations, the crane and lotus, were carefully arranged on the nightstand rather than discarded. Something warm unfurled in her chest at this simple evidence of appreciation. The room itself told her little about its occupant. The closet held well-tailored suits and shirts in neutral colors. A laptop and portfolio sat on the desk. No personal photos, no books, just the impersonal belongings of a business traveler. She cleaned efficiently, saving the bed for last. As she smoothed the comforter, she placed the emerald green dragon on the pillow, its tail curving gracefully, its head raised as if surveying its domain. She'd included details she normally didn't have time for: scales along the back, defined claws, a noble face. As she closed the door behind her, Elena wondered about the person who kept her creations, who had called to ask about her. In her imagination, she pictured someone older, perhaps a grandmother reminded of her own youth, or a kindly professor who recognized the traditional Japanese art form. She couldn't have imagined Marcus Chen, alone in his gallery office in New York, surrounded by million-dollar paintings yet feeling nothing until a paper crane appeared on his pillow. When Marcus returned to his room that evening, the dragon was waiting. He stopped in the doorway, briefcase still in hand, and laughed out loud, a sound so unfamiliar it startled him. The dragon was magnificent, more intricate than the previous creations, a feat of patience and skill that seemed impossible from mere folded paper. He placed it with the others, forming a small menagerie on his nightstand. Then, making a sudden decision, he picked up the hotel phone. "Front desk, how may I assist you, Mr. Chen?" "I'd like to leave a note for Elena in housekeeping," he said, surprising himself with the request. "Of course, sir. We can deliver a message." Marcus hesitated, suddenly unsure what to say. "Thank you" seemed insufficient. "Please tell her that her origami makes this room feel like more than just another hotel room, and ask if she takes commissions." After hanging up, he stared at the collection of paper creatures. Why did they affect him so? Perhaps because they were created without agenda, not to sell, not to impress critics, not to advance a career. They were simply small acts of beauty offered to a stranger with no expectation of return. When was the last time he had experienced art that way? When was the last time he had created that way? Marcus opened his sketchbook again, turning to a fresh page. This time, he didn't draw the origami itself, but tried to capture the feeling it evoked. The surprise of finding beauty in an unexpected place, the connection to unknown hands that had created something just for the person who would find it. His phone buzzed with emails and messages, but for the first time in years, Marcus let them go unanswered as he filled page after page with sketches, each one an attempt to capture what he'd forgotten about art, about connection, about the point of it all. Elena received the message during her morning briefing. Mrs. Patel handed her a note with an odd expression. "The guest in 307 left this for you," she said. "Apparently you've made quite an impression." Elena read the note twice, her cheeks warming. Commissions? Was he serious? She'd never considered her origami as anything but a private ritual, a small rebellion against the sameness of her days. That afternoon, she approached room 307 with uncharacteristic nervousness. She'd spent hours the previous night creating something special. A phoenix rising from flames, formed from paper she'd marbled herself using nail polish and water in her tiny apartment bathroom. Inside the room, she found a crisp white envelope on the desk with Elena, written in strong, decisive handwriting. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a brief note. "Your art has awakened something I thought was lost. Would you consider creating a larger piece? I'd like to compensate you properly for your talent. Marcus Chen." Beneath the note was a business card, Marcus Chen, director, Chen Gallery, New York, and 5 crisp $100 bills. Elena gasped, nearly dropping the money. $500? For paper folding? It was more than she made in a week at the hotel. Her mind raced. Rent was due next week, and her textbooks for next semester's classes would cost at least $300. This money would solve so many immediate problems, but larger questions loomed. Who was Marcus Chen? Why would he pay so much for origami? And what did he mean by a larger piece? She carefully returned the money and note to the envelope, tucking it into her uniform pocket. Then she placed the phoenix on the pillow, its wings spread wide in triumphant flight, red and gold paper catching the afternoon light like actual flame. With it, she left her own note, written on the back of a hotel notepad. Mr. Chen, thank you for your generous offer, but I can't accept payment for something I do from the heart. I'm honored that you appreciate my small creations. If you'd like to discuss a larger project, I finish my shift at 4 p.m. Elena. She hesitated before adding her phone number, then quickly left the room before she could change her mind. Marcus stood in the hotel lobby at 4:15, feeling unexpectedly nervous. He'd spent the day distracted, the acquisition meetings blurring together as he thought about the phoenix that now sat in his room, the most magnificent origami yet, with marbled paper that created the illusion of flickering flame. He wasn't sure what he'd expected of Elena, but when a young woman in a Navy hotel uniform approached him tentatively, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, and her eyes showing a wariness that spoke of hard-won caution, something shifted in his perception. "Mr. Chen?" she asked, her voice softer than he'd imagined. "Marcus, please," he said, extending his hand. "You must be Elena." She nodded, shaking his hand briefly. "Your note? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking for." Marcus gestured toward the hotel cafe. "Would you have time for coffee? I'd like to explain." Elena checked her watch. "I have to pick up my cousin from after-school care by 5:30. "This won't take long," he promised. Once seated with steaming cups between them, Marcus studied her more carefully. Elena's hands, the hands that created such delicate beauty, were slightly reddened from cleaning products, with a small burn scar across the right knuckles. She held herself with a contained dignity, shoulders straight despite obvious fatigue. "Your origami is extraordinary," he said simply. "I've never seen such emotion conveyed through paper folding." Elena looked down, clearly uncomfortable with praise. "It's just something my grandmother taught me. A hobby." "It's art," Marcus corrected gently. "And I should know. I own a gallery in New York." Her eyes widened slightly. "A real gallery? With paintings and sculptures and things? Contemporary art, yes. We represent about 20 artists and host exhibitions year-round." He hesitated. "The truth is, Elena, I've been struggling to find new voices, new perspectives for our anniversary exhibition. When I found your crane on my pillow, it was the first time in years I felt moved by something someone had created." Elena shook her head in disbelief. "They're just paper, Mr. Chen." "Marcus," he reminded her. "And no, they're not just anything. You're creating something meaningful every day, leaving it behind without recognition or reward. That's the purest form of artistic expression." He saw the doubt in her eyes, the inability to see her own gift through the lens he was offering. "Would you consider creating a larger installation for my gallery? Multiple pieces arranged as a complete work?" Elena laughed nervously. "I fold paper birds for hotel guests, Mr. Chen. I'm not an artist." "Everyone starts somewhere," Marcus said. "What if I told you I could offer you $5,000 for a collection of pieces for our exhibition?" The color drained from Elena's face. That's not possible. It's standard for a commissioned installation from an emerging artist," Marcus said, though in truth it was on the low end for his gallery. He didn't want to overwhelm her further. Elena stared into her coffee cup as if it might contain answers. "Why would you take such a risk on someone like me?" The question was so honest, so vulnerable, that Marcus found himself responding with equal honesty. "Because your work made me feel something when nothing else has. Because there's something in those paper folds that captures what I've been missing in the art world: humanity, humility, joy in creation itself." He leaned forward. "And because I believe that sometimes the most extraordinary talent is found in the most ordinary places, like a hotel room pillow." Elena looked up, meeting his eyes directly for the first time. "I have responsibilities. My cousin Lily, I'm her guardian. I can't just drop everything for an art project." "You wouldn't have to," Marcus assured her. "You could work on it here in Chicago. I'll provide all the materials, whatever you need." When it's ready, we'll arrange transportation to New York for the installation. He could see her calculating, weighing possibilities against practicalities. I'd need to keep my job here, she said finally. At least until you see if this works out? Marcus finished for her. I understand completely. Their coffee had grown cold, untouched between them. Elena checked her watch again. I need to go get Lily. Of course. Marcus reached for his wallet, extracting a card. My number. Think about it, Elena. No pressure, but... He smiled. I'd really like to see what you could create if given the chance. As she stood to leave, Elena hesitated. The phoenix I left today, it's yours to keep, whatever I decide. Marcus watched her walk away, struck by the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. A hotel maid who left origami on pillows. A gallery owner who had lost his way. It sounded like the beginning of a story he wouldn't have believed a week ago. Elena walked faster than usual to the bus stop, her mind spinning. $5,000 for paper folding. It seemed impossible, like something from a movie rather than her actual life. She thought of the small apartment she shared with 12-year-old Lily, the college textbooks she studied late into the night, the constant calculations of which bill could wait another week. She thought of her grandmother's hands guiding hers, teaching her that beauty could be created from the simplest materials. The bus lurched through evening traffic as Elena stared out the window, Marcus Chen's business card burning a hole in her pocket. What would Abuela say? Probably something wise about opportunities being God's whispers, about having the courage to step through doors when they opened. But Elena had learned caution the hard way. Life had taught her that things that seemed too good to be true usually were. And yet, the way Marcus had looked at her origami, with genuine wonder, as if her small paper creations were worthy of the same respect as the expensive art in his gallery. She got off the bus 2 blocks from Lily's after-school program, hurrying the rest of the way. Her cousin was waiting in the community center lobby, knees pulled up to her chest, reading a dog-eared library book. Sorry I'm a few minutes late, Elena said, offering her hand to help Lily up. Lily shrugged with the practiced nonchalance of near teenagers. It's okay. Ms. Rivera let me stay and read. She studied Elena's face. What's wrong? You look weird. Weird how? Elena asked as they began walking home. Like when you got that scholarship letter. Scared happy. Elena smiled. Lily had always been perceptive, even before losing her parents to the car accident 3 years ago that had made Elena her guardian at 25. Something happened at work, Elena admitted. Something unexpected. By the time they reached their apartment and Elena had explained her conversation with Marcus Chen, Lily was practically bouncing with excitement. You have to do it! You have to! She insisted, eyes wide. A real art gallery in New York. Like in the movies. It's not that simple, Lily, Elena cautioned, setting out leftover rice and beans for dinner. I don't know anything about the art world. I've never even been to New York. So what? Your origami is amazing. Remember when you made me that dragon mobile for my birthday? My teacher wanted to know where we bought it. Elena smiled at the memory. She'd spent weeks secretly working on that project, creating 24 intricately folded creatures that now hung above Lily's bed. $5,000 would pay for a whole year of your college classes, Lily pointed out, always practical despite her excitement. And maybe we could fix the car. Their ancient Toyota had been sitting in the apartment complex parking lot for months, needing repairs they couldn't afford. Elena depended on Chicago's public transportation, which added hours to her commute each week. I just don't want to get my hopes up, Elena said softly. Or yours. Lily put down her fork and fixed Elena with her most serious expression. Abuela always said your hands were magic, that you could coax paper to tell stories. Her voice softened. Maybe it's time for other people to hear those stories too. Elena reached across the table and squeezed Lily's hand, a lump forming in her throat. When had her cousin become so wise? Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Elena sat at their small kitchen table with a stack of colored paper. Her fingers moved almost unconsciously, folding and shaping, as she considered Marcus Chen's offer. What would she create if given the chance? What story would she tell with paper and patience? As the night deepened, origami figures accumulated around her, birds in flight, flowers in bloom, creatures real and imagined. Each one a possibility, each one a tiny act of courage. Marcus returned to New York with a cardboard box containing 5 origami creations and Elena's agreement to create an installation for the gallery's anniversary exhibition. The pieces traveled with him in the first-class cabin, too precious to trust to checked luggage. His assistant, Zoe, looked bewildered when he placed the box reverently on his desk at the gallery. "This is what you found in Chicago?" she asked skeptically. "Paper animals?" "Not just paper animals," Marcus corrected, carefully removing the phoenix to show her. "Look at the marbling technique she used here. And the structural integrity, not a drop of glue, just folded paper." Zoe leaned closer, professional curiosity overcoming her initial doubt. "It is beautiful craftsmanship," she admitted. "But for the centerpiece of our anniversary exhibition, the board is expecting something substantial." "This is just the beginning," Marcus said. "Elena will create a full installation. I've already spoken with her about scale, materials, concept." "Elena being the hotel maid?" Zoe clarified, her tone carefully neutral. Marcus looked up sharply. "Elena Vasquez, yes. A self-taught artist whose work speaks to me in ways nothing has for years." He softened his voice. "Trust me on this, Zoe. I know it sounds unusual, but when you see the completed installation, it's your gallery," Zoe conceded. "And we did promise discovery in the press materials." She picked up her tablet. "What's the timeline?" "The exhibition opens in 6 weeks. She'll ship components as they're completed. I've arranged for specialty papers and materials to be delivered to her this week." Marcus carefully returned the phoenix to its box. "And I'll be going back to Chicago in 3 weeks to check on progress." After Zoe left, Marcus sat alone in his office, surrounded by the trappings of success that had come to feel like a cage. The small paper creatures seemed to watch him from their box, witnesses to his quiet rebellion against what the art world expected of Marcus Chen. He opened his sketchbook to the drawings he'd made in the hotel room, not of the origami itself, but of the feelings it evoked. There was something there, something he hadn't felt in his own work for too long. Marcus turned to a fresh page and began to draw again, his pencil moving with newfound purpose. The specialty papers arrived at Elena's apartment 2 days later, a massive delivery that barely fit through their door. Lily helped her unwrap the packages, both of them marveling at the textures and colors. Handmade Japanese washi, translucent vellum, sturdy cardstock in every shade imaginable, even sheets embedded with dried flowers and gold flecks. "These must have cost a fortune," Elena whispered, running her fingers over a sheet of paper so fine it seemed to float. Included was a letter from Marcus outlining his thoughts for the installation, a progression from small, individual pieces to larger, interconnected structures, all exploring themes of transformation and hidden beauty. He suggested a central piece that visitors could walk around, experiencing from multiple angles, with smaller satellite works creating context. The scope terrified and exhilarated Elena in equal measure. She'd never created anything larger than the Dragon Mobile for Lily's room. How would she scale up her delicate art without losing its essence? That weekend, Elena cleared their small living room, pushing furniture against walls to create a workspace. Lily helped her set up a folding table and organize the papers by weight and color. "It's like you're a real artist with a studio," Lily said, arranging pencils and rulers in perfect alignment. Elena laughed nervously. "I have no idea what I'm doing, Lily." "Yes, you do," her cousin insisted. "You just never had the chance to show it before." With that simple faith supporting her, Elena began. She started with what she knew, small, perfect folds that became birds, flowers, geometric shapes. But as days passed, she grew bolder, experimenting with multiple sheets connected through clever folds, creating larger structures that could stand independently. She worked evenings after her hotel shifts and weekends between loads of laundry and helping Lily with homework. Sometimes she woke at dawn, unable to wait until morning to try a new technique that had come to her in dreams. The pieces began to tell a story, her story, though she hadn't planned it that way. There were elements of struggle, of darkness folded into light, of beauty emerging from unexpected places. In the center was a massive phoenix rising from stylized flames, its wingspan nearly 4 feet across, constructed from hundreds of interlocking folds that had taken her 3 failed attempts to perfect. 2 weeks into the project, Mrs. Patel called Elena into her office at the hotel. "Your guest from 307 has made an unusual request," she said without preamble. "He's asked if we could reduce your hours temporarily while maintaining your full salary. He said something about an art commission." Elena's heart pounded. Yes. Mr. Chen has asked me to create something for his gallery in New York, but I didn't ask him to speak to you about my hours." Mrs. Patel waved this away. "He was very generous with the hotel. Apparently, he's extended his corporate account with us for another year. Quite a valuable client." She studied Elena over her glasses. "Is this serious? This art opportunity?" Elena nodded. "I think it might be. But I still need my job, Mrs. Patel. I can't risk everything on one exhibition." "Of course not. But perhaps we can arrange a modified schedule for the next month. 3 days a week instead of 5, but with your full-time pay." Mrs. Patel's stern expression softened slightly. "My daughter is an artist in Mumbai. I know how hard that path can be, especially for women who don't come from privilege." Elena blinked back unexpected tears. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll bring me an invitation to this fancy New York gallery opening," Mrs. Patel said with a rare smile. "I've never been to an art exhibition before." With more time to work, Elena's creation expanded, both physically and conceptually. She built supporting structures from thin bamboo, creating a framework for her paper world that gave it height and dimension without sacrificing delicacy. Each night, she photographed her progress and sent the images to Marcus. His responses were always encouraging, sometimes offering gentle suggestions, but mostly expressing growing excitement about what she was creating. 3 weeks after their first meeting, Marcus returned to Chicago. The hotel arranged a conference room where Elena could show Marcus her work in progress. She arrived early, carefully transporting the central Phoenix piece and several of the completed satellite elements. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged them on the large table. When Marcus entered the room, his expression told her everything she needed to know. He circled the table slowly, taking in each piece from multiple angles, occasionally leaning close to examine a particular fold or connection. For several minutes he said nothing, and Elena's anxiety mounted with each passing second. Finally, he looked up, his eyes bright with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "Elena," he said softly, "this is extraordinary." She released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Really? I'm not sure if the central structure is stable enough for transport, and I'm still working on how the satellite pieces will be arranged." "It's perfect," Marcus interrupted. "The way you've created this narrative through form, the small pieces opening toward the phoenix, the progression from darkness to light, from complexity to elegant simplicity, it's exactly what I was hoping for." He gestured to the central phoenix. "And this, the engineering alone is remarkable, but the emotional impact..." He shook his head, seemingly at a loss for words. "It's my story," Elena admitted quietly. "I didn't plan it that way, but as I worked, I realized I was folding my own journey into the paper." Marcus nodded. "The best art always does that, whether the artist intends it or not." He met her eyes. "This will be the centerpiece of our exhibition. Not just a section, the centerpiece." Elena felt lightheaded. "What about your other artists? The established ones? They'll be featured too, but this..." He gestured to her creation. "This is what the exhibition needed. Something authentic, something that speaks to transformation and resilience without irony or pretension." He reached into his briefcase and withdrew an envelope. "The first half of your commission, as agreed. And this," he handed her a second envelope, "is your plane ticket to New York for the opening. For you and Lily both." Elena stared at the envelopes in her hand. "New York? Of course. You should be there to see how people respond to your work." Marcus smiled. "And to meet the collectors who will undoubtedly want to commission pieces of their own." The reality of what was happening finally hit Elena with full force. Her origami, the small act of creativity she'd performed as personal rebellion, as connection to her grandmother's memory, was about to be displayed in a prestigious New York gallery. People would see it, judge it, perhaps even want to buy it. What if they don't understand it? She whispered, voicing her deepest fear. What if they think it's just folded paper? Marcus's expression grew serious. "Elena, the art world is full of people seeking the next authentic voice. They've seen every gimmick, every trend. What they rarely encounter is work created from pure joy and necessity, work that exists because the artist couldn't help but create it." He gestured to her pieces. "This will speak to people because it's genuine. Because you're genuine." He checked his watch. "I have meetings this afternoon, but tomorrow evening, would you and Lily join me for dinner? I'd like to discuss the installation logistics and get to know the artist behind the work a bit better." After Marcus left, Elena remained in the conference room, looking at her creation with new eyes, trying to see it as he did, as art worthy of a New York gallery rather than just folded paper. The phoenix seemed to gaze back at her, its paper wings poised for flight, ready to carry her toward a future she'd never imagined possible. Dinner the following evening was at a restaurant far nicer than any Elena had ever visited. She wore her one good dress, helped Lily with her hair, and tried to quell the butterflies in her stomach as their taxi approached the gleaming downtown establishment. Marcus was waiting in the lobby, dressed more casually than she'd seen him before, dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made him look younger, less like the serious gallery director, and more like a person Elena might actually know. "There's the artist and her champion," he said warmly, bending slightly to shake Lily's hand with the same formality he'd use with an adult. "I've heard so much about you, Lily," Lily beamed. "Elena says you're going to make her famous." Marcus laughed. "I think her talent will do that all on its own. I'm just providing the wall space." Over dinner, Elena was surprised at how easily conversation flowed. Marcus asked Lily about school, listened intently to her descriptions of her favorite subjects, and seemed genuinely interested in her perspective on Elena's art. "I've watched her make origami my whole life," Lily explained, carefully cutting her steak. "Even when we didn't have money for Christmas presents, she would make me these amazing paper sculptures. The other kids had plastic toys, but I had dragons and birds that looked like they could fly away if you didn't watch them." Marcus smiled. "When did you realize your cousin had this special talent?" Lily considered this seriously. "After my parents died, I guess. Elena had to work 2 jobs, and sometimes she'd come home so tired she could barely stand up. But she would still sit at the kitchen table and fold paper, like it was helping her breathe." She glanced at Elena. "That's when I knew it wasn't just a hobby. It was something she needed." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks, touched and slightly embarrassed by Lily's perception. "The origami was something from before, something that connected me to Abuela, to simpler times. It helped me feel grounded when everything was changing so fast." Marcus nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Art can be an anchor that way. Something that remains yours no matter what life throws at you." As the evening progressed, Elena found herself telling Marcus things she rarely shared, about her parents' return to Mexico when she was in high school, leaving her with her grandmother, about Abuela's slow decline and how origami had become their shared language when words became difficult, about the sudden responsibility of raising Lily while barely an adult herself. In turn, Marcus spoke of his immigrant parents who had sacrificed everything for his education, of the pressure to succeed that had driven him relentlessly forward, of the gradual realization that his success had somehow disconnected him from the joy that had drawn him to art in the first place. "Finding your crane on my pillow was like someone switching on a light in a dark room," he admitted. "It reminded me why I started the gallery, not for status or sales, but because art helps us recognize ourselves and each other." By the time dessert arrived, Elena felt a connection with Marcus that transcended their professional arrangement. He wasn't just a wealthy gallery owner taking a chance on her work, he was a person seeking meaning, just as she was. As they waited for the check, Marcus reached into his bag and pulled out a small sketchbook. "I wanted to show you something," he said, seeming almost shy. "Your origami inspired me to start drawing again, something I haven't done seriously in years." He opened the book to reveal beautiful sketches, not realistic renderings, but emotional interpretations, lines and shadows that somehow captured the essence of her paper creations rather than their literal forms. "These are beautiful," Elena said, genuinely moved. "You never told me you were an artist too." Marcus shrugged. "I was once, before the business of art took over." He turned another page. "I've been thinking about a collaborative aspect to your installation, these drawings as backdrop or context for your origami, if you're open to it." Elena studied the sketches, seeing how they complemented her work without overshadowing it. "I'd be honored," she said simply. As they left the restaurant, Lily walking slightly ahead, Marcus touched Elena's arm lightly. "Thank you for trusting me with your art," he said quietly, "and for reminding me why art matters in the first place." Under the Chicago streetlights, with Lily's laughter floating back to them and the future suddenly full of possibilities, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope, unfolding like paper in practiced hands. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of creation and preparation. Elena completed the installation pieces, working with a focus and energy she'd never known she possessed. Marcus arranged for professional packing and shipping, ensuring each delicate component would arrive safely in New York. Their communication evolved from formal emails to text messages filled with ideas, questions, and occasional personal notes. Elena found herself looking forward to these exchanges, to Marcus's insights and encouragement, to the growing sense that they were creating something meaningful together. Mrs. Patel extended Elena's reduced schedule, and word spread through the hotel about the maid whose origami had caught the attention of a famous gallery owner. Guests began requesting her paper creations specifically, leaving larger tips when they found origami on their pillows. Finally, the day arrived for Elena and Lily to fly to New York, 3 days before the exhibition opening. It was Lily's first time on an airplane, and Elena's first trip outside the Midwest. They pressed together at the window, watching Chicago shrink beneath them, the familiar giving way to the unknown. Marcus met them at JFK Airport, a quiet presence amid the chaos of arrivals. He'd arranged a car and accommodations at a boutique hotel within walking distance of the gallery. "Your installation arrived safely," he told Elena as they drove into Manhattan. "My team has been assembling it according to your diagrams. I've kept them away from the central pieces, though. I thought you might want to place those yourself." Elena nodded, suddenly too overwhelmed to speak. The skyscrapers of New York loomed around them, impossibly tall and gleaming in the afternoon sun. Lily's face was pressed to the window, her eyes wide with wonder. "Is that where your gallery is?" she asked, pointing to an elegant building as they turned onto a tree-lined street in Chelsea. Marcus smiled. "Close. It's just a few blocks from here." He glanced at Elena. "We can go there now if you're not too tired from the flight." "Yes, please," Elena said, finding her voice. "I don't think I could sleep without seeing it." The Chen Gallery occupied the ground floor of a renovated industrial building, its facade all glass and steel, elegant in its simplicity. Inside, the space opened dramatically, with soaring ceilings and careful lighting that created distinct areas within the larger whole. Elena followed Marcus through the main gallery, where workers were hanging paintings and adjusting spotlights. In the center of the space, partially hidden behind temporary walls, was a platform where her installation would stand. "We're keeping it under wraps until the opening," Marcus explained, building anticipation. He led them around the barrier, and Elena stopped short, her hand flying to her mouth. There it was, her creation, larger and more magnificent than it had seemed in her small apartment. The central phoenix rose proudly from its paper flames, surrounded by the satellite pieces that told the story of transformation and rebirth. "Oh, Elena," Lily whispered beside her. "It's beautiful." A woman approached with a tablet in hand. "Marcus, we need your approval on the lighting design for the north wall." She stopped when she saw Elena and Lily. "You must be the artist." "I'm Zoe, Marcus's assistant director." Elena shook her hand, still speechless at the sight of her work in this prestigious space. "The installation is remarkable," Zoe continued. "When Marcus first described it, I couldn't visualize the scale, but now," she gestured admiringly. "The engineering alone is impressive, but the emotional impact is what really strikes me." "Thank you," Elena managed. "It's strange to see it here. In my apartment it seemed huge, but in this space, it commands the room," Marcus said quietly, just as I knew it would. He turned to Zoe. "Let's give Elena some time with her work. I'm sure she'll want to make adjustments now that she sees it in situ." As Zoe led Lily away to show her other parts of the gallery, Marcus stayed behind with Elena. "What do you think? Does it need anything?" Elena circled the installation slowly, seeing it with fresh eyes in this new context. "The lighting needs to be warmer here," she said, pointing to the base of the phoenix, "to enhance the illusion of flames. And this section," she indicated a series of transitional pieces, "needs more space between elements. The progression should feel more gradual." Marcus nodded, making notes on his phone. "What about the drawings? I've had them framed but wanted your approval on placement." He led her to where his sketches hung on an adjacent wall, simple black frames emphasizing the emotional lines within. Seeing them displayed this way, as art in their own right, Elena felt a surge of pride, not just in her work, but in their collaboration, in the unexpected connection that had brought them to this moment. "They're perfect," she said. "A dialogue between two-dimensional and three-dimensional, between your perspective and mine." Marcus smiled, the warmth reaching his eyes. "That's exactly what I hoped for." For the next 2 days, Elena worked closely with the gallery team, making final adjustments to her installation, participating in decisions about lighting and placement that she'd never imagined would be part of her life. Lily shadowed Zoe, absorbing everything about how a gallery functioned, asking questions that made the staff smile with their perception. In quiet moments, Elena would find herself standing before her creation, marveling at the journey that had brought her here, from folding paper cranes on hotel pillows to creating art worthy of this space, these lights, this audience. And sometimes, when she looked up, she would catch Marcus watching her with an expression that mirrored her own wonder, as if he too couldn't quite believe the story they had somehow written together. The night of the exhibition opening arrived with a flurry of last-minute preparations. The gallery hummed with anticipation as staff made final adjustments, caterers set up elegant trays of hors d'oeuvres, and photographers tested lighting for the press coverage. In a small office that had been converted to a dressing room, Elena stood before a mirror, hardly recognizing herself in the simple but elegant black dress Marcus had arranged for her. Lily sat nearby, already dressed in a new outfit they'd purchased the day before, legs swinging as she played a game on Elena's phone. A soft knock at the door preceded Zoe's entrance. 15 minutes until doors open, she announced. Elena, you look stunning. Elena smiled nervously. I feel like I'm playing dress-up. Well, you look like you belong, Zoe assured her. Marcus asked me to give you this. She handed Elena a small box. Inside was a delicate necklace, a silver phoenix pendant on a fine chain. A small card read simply, "For the artist who rose from her own creative fire. M." Elena's fingers trembled slightly as she lifted the necklace. Would you help me put it on? Zoe fastened the clasp, adjusting the pendant so it nestled perfectly at Elena's collarbone. Perfect, she said. Now are you ready to meet your public? The main gallery was already filling with people when Elena emerged. Elegantly dressed art collectors, critics, other artists, all moving through the space with glasses of champagne, examining the works on display. She hesitated in the doorway, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of what was happening. Then Marcus was beside her, calm and reassuring in his perfectly tailored suit. There you are, he said softly. The necklace suits you. It's beautiful. Elena touched it gently. Thank you. Are you ready? He asked, offering his arm. Elena took a deep breath and nodded, placing her hand on his sleeve. With Lily following close behind, they entered the gallery. What happened next was a blur of introductions, conversations, and unexpected moments of recognition. Critics asked Elena about her techniques and inspirations. Collectors inquired about commissioning work. Gallery owners from other cities handed her business cards. Photographers requested poses beside her installation, which stood illuminated at the center of the room, drawing gasps of admiration from everyone who approached it. Throughout it all, Marcus remained nearby, sometimes guiding the conversation, sometimes stepping back to let Elena speak for herself. She found her voice growing stronger with each interaction, her initial terror giving way to quiet confidence as she realized that these people, these experts in the art world, were genuinely moved by what she had created. Midway through the evening, Marcus clinked a glass for attention and the room quieted. Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate the Chen Gallery's 5th anniversary exhibition, he began. When we started planning this event, I knew I wanted it to represent not just where the gallery has been, but where we're going, our commitment to finding authentic voices that speak to the human experience in all its complexity. He gestured toward Elena's installation. What I couldn't have anticipated was finding that voice in a Chicago hotel room in the form of a small paper crane left on a pillow by a housekeeper who had been creating art her entire life without recognition. Elena felt the room's attention shift to her, 100 pairs of eyes suddenly focused on her face. Elena Vasquez's work embodies everything I believe art should be, Marcus continued. It transforms humble materials into objects of beauty and meaning. It communicates universal experiences through deeply personal expression. And it reminds us that creativity exists everywhere, not just in traditional artistic spaces. He raised his glass. To Elena, whose paper phoenix has helped this gallery rise into its next chapter, and to all of you who support the artists who help us see the world anew. The crowd applauded, and Elena felt Lily's hand slip into hers, squeezing tightly with pride. As the evening continued, she began to understand that something fundamental had shifted in her life, that the woman who had cleaned hotel rooms for years, who had folded paper in stolen moments between responsibilities, was now being seen in an entirely new light. Later, as the crowd thinned and the event wound down, Elena found herself standing alone before her installation, the phoenix gleaming under careful spotlights, its paper wings seeming almost to tremble with life. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked, appearing quietly beside her. Elena considered the question. "I'm thinking about my grandmother," she said finally. About how she taught me to fold paper when I was small, how she told me that origami was about finding the shape that was already hidden in the paper, waiting to be revealed. She turned to look at him. That's what you did for me, Marcus. You saw something in those little paper creatures I left on pillows, something I couldn't see myself. Marcus shook his head. I only recognized what was already there, he said softly. Your talent, your voice, your story. I just provided the space for others to see it too. They stood in comfortable silence, regarding the installation that had brought them together. Around them, the gallery staff began the subtle process of closing for the night, dimming peripheral lights, collecting abandoned glasses. What happens now? Elena asked, finally voicing the question that had hovered at the edges of her mind throughout the evening. Marcus smiled. Now? Several collectors have expressed interest in commissioning work. 3 galleries have asked about touring the installation after our exhibition ends. And he hesitated, suddenly less certain than she'd ever seen him. I was hoping you might consider a more permanent relationship with the Chen Gallery. As one of our represented artists, Elena's breath caught. I mean creating art full-time, Elena, with the support and resources to develop your vision, to explore new techniques and scales. His eyes held hers. I believe in your talent. Tonight proved I'm not alone in that. The possibility unfurled before her, a life she had never allowed herself to imagine, a future shaped by creation rather than necessity. I would need to think about logistics, she said carefully. Lily's school, our apartment in Chicago. Of course. Marcus nodded. There's no rush. Take the time you need. He hesitated again. And perhaps we could discuss it further over dinner tomorrow? Just the 2 of us? The question contained another question, one that hovered in the air between them, about connection that had grown beyond artist and patron, about possibilities neither had anticipated when a paper crane appeared on a hotel pillow. Elena smiled, feeling the weight of the phoenix pendant against her skin, a small, perfect symbol of transformation. I'd like that, she said simply. As they walked together toward the gallery exit where Lily waited, Elena glanced back one last time at her creation. Paper folded into beauty, ordinary materials transformed through patience and vision, much like her own life had been transformed through an unexpected act of recognition. Outside, New York City glittered around them, full of possibilities as endless and intricate as the folds of paper that had brought them together.